Hello. Today I'm going to be talking about all the great books that I read in May. I had a really good reading month. I felt very motivated by plotty books. I was like, yes, bring me your plotty science fiction and fantasy. Like, let's go, let's have a story, let's go on an adventure. So there are a lot of those this month. Look forward to it. Yeah, I don't know. That was a weird intro, but let's just get into the books. First up, I wanted to talk about Upstream by Mary Oliver. This is technically a book that I read last month, but then I forgot to add it to my wrap-up. So we're just, Upstream is a collection of essays from Mary Oliver, who is normally a poet, but these are prose pieces about her life on the Cape in Massachusetts, her relationship with the environment, and then also about some of the authors and writers who have influenced her work. And I found this really, really engaging. I read it quite quickly. It's quite a short collection, and I think I'd give it 4 stars overall, just because I think if I discovered it earlier, it would have probably had a little bit more of an impact on me, but I've already discovered a lot of nature writers that I really like, so I know Mary Oliver is a classic, but she's sort of just fit into the pack. Didn't really entirely distinguish herself. Why am I being so mean? It was a good book. It was a good book. It went a touch to the saccharine at some points, I think, is my real problem with it. But when she's describing her life, the environment around her, she really does have that poet's ear where every word is chosen so carefully that it really feels like there's not one out of place. So the writing is beautiful. The topic is something that I love. I really enjoyed this book and I give it 4 stars. After that, I read H is for Hawk by Helen MacDonald. This is a book that I have had on my TBR for a while. It's a memoir about a woman who trains a goshawk after the death of her father. I had been sort of avoiding it, honestly, because I find that I have not in the past really enjoyed grief memoirs. I realize it's not really a genre you're supposed to enjoy, but I find them a little bit too heavy. But I actually didn't find that was the case with this one. Helen MacDonald is a historian at Cambridge, and she has always been obsessed with hawks and falconry and sort of the birds themselves and the meaning of falconry in sort of the British class system. And it's just a very personal look at her obsession with hawks, the death of her father, her experience training this goshawk, and also she ties in literature in a really interesting way because I think T.H. White wrote a book about training a goshawk as well, so there's references to T.H. White, and she goes sort of in depth about his life and his experience with nature. It's definitely one of those memoirs that somewhat defies categorization, as you might guess from my description, but in a way it sort of links all of these topics and I think really gave quite a profound look at the nature of grief and the nature of our relationship with the wild world, our need to control it, and also to be part of it. I normally read memoirs in audiobook form. It's like one of the only nonfiction genres that I really enjoy reading in audiobook more than in paper. However, this is one that I think I would like to go back and read physically at some point because it touched on a lot of things that I would like to return to and think about more, which is sort of why I like to read nonfiction in the flesh. That's not the right term. In person? That's also not the right term. In paperback. I like to read paper copies of nonfiction because, I underline and then I think about the things I underline and blah, blah, blah. I said a couple weeks ago that I was going to do an annotation video. I will do that. I've just realized that my annotation system is much less organized or interesting than I thought, so we're going to clean it up a bit and then we're going to talk about it. Woo! Okay, anyways, moving on. Oh, H is for Hawk. I think I rated it 5 stars. Or I didn't rate it because it's a memoir, but I think I rated it 5 stars because I really loved it. And I'm very excited to read more of her writing in the future. Those were all the nonfiction I read this month. The rest is pretty much all fantasy, so buckle in. After that one, I read Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft, which is about a man and his wife who are coming to the Tower of Babel for their honeymoon. And in this world, the Tower of Babel is like this giant tower, and nobody really knows how far up it goes. It's the symbol of progress and technical innovation, but it's also sort of mysterious because nobody's ever flown to the top. So this guy, Senlin, goes and immediately loses his wife. It's immediately she's just like gone, and he's like, oh shit, I guess I should find her. So he starts climbing up the tower, and it's definitely a situation where not everything is as it seems in the tower. He has like sort of different trials on different levels as he looks for his wife. And I would say vibe-wise, it's very adult Alice in Wonderland, I guess. Like there's a lot going on where it's a bit inexplicable and everybody just sort of looks at it and is like, huh. And then they move on, you know what I mean? Or like, it's just this side of absurdist, but then people are accepting of the absurdity, which is just a vibe I'm really into in fantasy. Like, I don't think very many authors do it well, but I think that in this book, it is very well done. I really enjoyed the first book in this series. I think it's 3 or 4 books long, so I'm really excited to go forth and continue reading it. I gave this book 4 stars. After that, I read The Siren of Sussex by Mimi Matthews, and this is a book that I did not rate highly, but I only have myself to blame. This is a book that I saw Shannon rated poorly, and then I was looking for just a bit of a zone out book, just a bit of a like, I have a lot of work to do. I don't want something that's going to make me think too hard or feel too much, but it's still a story. And I was like, how about picking up this book that I already know is probably mediocre? And it was, in fact, mediocre. So The Siren of Sussex is about it's a romance, I guess. It's about a woman who comes to London and she's like, oh, I want to grab a husband. I'm going to get this nice coat for writing. And then it's a romance in between her and the tailor, I guess. I feel like there's a fancier word for it, who is a man of Indian descent. It's like, you know, Victorian or whatever, so there's like gasp class differences and gasp interracial relationship, but it was fine. I don't know. Definitely nothing to write home about. I would not actively recommend anybody read it. There was an element of insta-love, which I find very frustrating, because if you don't show me how 2 characters develop their relationship, I'm not going to be at all invested. So if it's just like, oh, wow, we're somehow immediately attracted to each other, and like, this woman's going to be the rest of my life, or what, you know, it wasn't that bad, but like, that was definitely the vibe, and I'm not really here for it. I think I rated it 2 stars. Probably just don't read it. And then after that, I read The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. And this is one that I really haven't seen a lot of on Booktube except for Noelle. Noelle is like, Kingdom of Back, let's go. Let's do this. And Noelle, you're right. It's great. I love it. Kingdom of Back is about Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's sister, Nonneral. I think her name is Anna Marie, but everybody calls her Nonneral. And she is also a child prodigy. So when they were children, Nonneral and Wolfgang sort of toured Europe as child prodigies and were sort of like almost a traveling circus act a little bit. So this is sort of the story of her and her talent and her like desire to be remembered. And because of her desire to be remembered, she makes a deal with a sort of fairy prince that she's going to help him out, he's going to help her out, and her music will be remembered, basically. Of course, that's not exactly how it goes, as you might imagine. But yes, it was a really good story. It's mainly about the relationship in between Nonneral and Wolfgang, and their sibling relationship, their sibling love. I found that emotionally it really delivered for me. There isn't really anything that's going to be completely mind-blowing about the story itself, but in terms of the relationships and how they develop and the emotional payoff at the end, I would say Like 5 out of 5, excellent. I think Marie Lu also really hit the cadence of a fairy tale very well. So apparently, I had no idea about this, but apparently Kingdom of Back is an actual sort of game that Wolfgang and Nannerl played in real life. Like, they were traveling around Europe in a carriage, and to entertain themselves they came up with this magical kingdom and had their footmen like draw a map of it and everything. So it's sort of based on these stories that the real Mozarts were telling to each other, but taken and like, you know, the fantasy world is brought to life. But she really hits that tone of fairy tale perfectly. So I really enjoyed this book, and I love a standalone fantasy novel. Like, I feel like not enough people write standalone fantasy. Yeah, I would highly recommend this. 4 out of 5 stars. After that, I read Jade City by Fonda Lee. I got myself into a number of series this month, and I don't really know what I'm going to do about it because I'm very bad at following up on series. But maybe next month I'm just going to read all the sequels, and then the month after that I'll read all the sequels, and then I'll just read sequels for the rest of my life. Anyway, sorry. I read Jade City. This is a book about Greenbones, who are, I want to say, sort of like the mafia in some Hong Kong-esque fantasy world where Jade gives you powers. In the city, there are a couple of different sort of mafia-esque factions that are in control of the Jade, and they, at the beginning of the book, have sort of a tense piece, which begins to break down as one of the clans sort of starts encroaching on the other one's territory. So the first book is definitely a lot about the sort of world building of this, like how the sort of culture around Jade evolved, how there are outside powers that are interested in Jade and controlling Jade, and how these clans had evolved from basically being freedom fighters under colonialism into the sort of local mafia. All of which I found totally fascinating. I am very interested to see sort of plot-wise where it goes from here, but I think I really, really enjoyed the setup in this book, and I think I also rated it a 4 stars. Maybe I'm just easy to please this month. I feel like I've given most things 4 or 5 stars, except for that romance, which, whatever. Next up, I read Redwall, which is like Redwall, you know, Redwall, like Redwall. Anyways, I was really excited to read this book. I sort of feel like I shouldn't talk about it because I am reading it for like a themed video type thing, which means that maybe I should make it a secret TBR, but then also I don't want to not talk about the books I read because, like, who knows if this video is ever actually gonna come out. But yes, I liked it. And hopefully that video comes out because I'm not going to talk about it here. So that's pressure on me. And the last book I read in May was Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. So this is the book series that The Expanse is based off of, which I have not actually watched The Expanse. I was sort of like, oh, I want to read it first. And now I'm like, maybe I just want to read it and I don't want to watch it at all. We'll see. But that does not mean I did not like the book. I really liked the book. This is basically the story of Holden and Miller. Holden he's an officer on a Navy spaceship because we're in space. This is sci-fi. But his ship gets exploded. And he and a couple of other crew members were on a shuttle at the time. So they sort of are on a journey trying to figure out who murdered all of their friends. and then there is Miller, who is a cop on the planet Ceres. Is Ceres a moon? On the station Ceres. Miller is tasked with finding basically a rich girl who has disappeared, and her family wants her brought back to heal. So their paths intersect in interesting ways. This is very plotty, but it also sets up a lot of really interesting political dynamics that I'm excited will play out in future books. I think this is a 9-book series, so there's a lot for me to get through. But there's like Earth and Mars both have their own populations, have their own settlements on Earth and Mars, and then there's also the Belters, who are the people who live out in the asteroid belt, and they are kept somewhat dependent on Earth, and there is a political movement towards independence in the asteroid belt. And yeah, I don't know. Sometimes with these summaries, I feel like I'm just giving you a random assortment of information until I decide that I've probably talked too much about it and there's not really a good beginning or end. But what I mean to say is that I really enjoyed this book. There is a lot of forward motion, a lot of the sections end on cliffhangers. There are a lot of ship explosions. There's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of tension. Again, plotty. It's a plotty book. So I gave this, again, 4 stars. This is the month of 4-star reads. And I'm really excited to pick up the next in the series. Those are all the books that I read in May. I hope you guys also had good reading months. Please let me know if you've read any of these in the comments, and also I'd love to hear what you're reading and loving these days. Yeah, so I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.